Hello, I'm Jo Fay, and this is a SwissInfo podcast. SwissInfo is the multilingual and international public media company of Switzerland. Welcome to the second episode of our latest season of the Swiss Connection Science podcast, where we're exploring some of the biggest topics in the pharmaceutical and healthcare field right now. Today we're talking about Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's has baffled researchers for decades. Drug makers have poured billions into researching the disease. It slowly destroys memory and thinking skills. But they haven't come out with a new drug for this for at least 20 years. This all changed in July 2023, when the US Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, approved lecanemab, sold under the name Leqembi. It's made by US firm Biogen and Japanese firm Eisai, and it's for the treatment of early Alzheimer's disease. But it hasn't all been smooth sailing. Today, our healthcare reporter, Jessica Davis Pluess, will talk about the hope and the hype surrounding the latest Alzheimer's drugs.
The last 2 years have really been an exciting time in Alzheimer's research. 2 drugs were approved by US regulators, lecanemab, sold as Leqembi, and donanemab, sold by Eli Lilly as Kisunla. Several other countries followed suit. Japan, China, and South Korea also approved Leqembi shortly after. But in Europe, it's been a different story. The European Medicines Agency rejected it. The UK agreed but rejected the price. And Switzerland, at least by the time we recorded this episode, hadn't come out with a decision. Experts have hailed these drugs as breakthroughs, but the decision around whether to approve them and pay for them hasn't been straightforward. I wanted to understand why this is the case, so I went to speak to an expert at one of Switzerland's 54 memory clinics. Memory clinics are where people can go to get diagnosis and treatment for a range of memory and cognitive-related diseases. These are unique in the world because they bring together different disciplines: old-age psychiatry, geriatrics, neurology, and neuropsychology under one roof. Dr. Bogdan Dargansky heads the Swiss Memory Clinic at the Inselspital, the largest hospital in Bern.
My name is Bogdan Dargansky. I'm a neurologist, trained in Germany, UK and Switzerland, and I'm the head of the memory clinic at the University Hospital in Bern, Switzerland. How I came to neurodegeneration and particularly the type of neurodegeneration that is associated with cognitive decline, what we previously also now called dementia, is that we still lacked until recently an efficient treatment. And this is always, I think, what we expect from medicine. I'll go to a doctor to get a treatment for my problem, but we didn't have one. And of course, this is the most frustrating part for a clinician who wants to help but doesn't have the means for it.
This was back in the 1990s when the first stroke treatments came out. But he quickly realized that a cure for Alzheimer's wouldn't be that easy.
We are good plumbers, but not good electricians, because this is what exactly is now bothering us, be it for epilepsy efficient treatment or now in the field much more of cognitive decline. How can we restore such a complex system as the brain and such combination of deficits? Because even in Alzheimer's disease, we are not just seeing memory problems. There is much more diversity of the symptoms just for this pathology. And of course, we know, unfortunately, with increasing age, we don't have or rarely have just one health problem.
Looking back at your career and kind of what we've learned about Alzheimer's as the kind of causes and how far you think we are to really understanding the cause. Do we understand it 100% or do we just still understand 10% of this disease? In what causes it, how it manifests?
Well, as an academic, I don't like this black and white. Therefore, I'll be always cautious in my expression about the degree of certainness that we have in the causes. Alzheimer's disease is a brain disorder. It's not just a cognitive decline related to age or something like this. And this is what we have really to put at the first place. This is a disease. It's a brain disease associated with cell death. We're losing brain cells progressively. And therefore we have to take it seriously. I mean, now we know that it's a disease that is associated with faulty proteins. We know the names of these proteins. The one that is causatively related to Alzheimer's disease is the protein beta amyloid. And we know from empirical studies following individuals from the general population for 20 years that the first accumulation of this protein, amyloid beta, starts 20 years before the first symptoms appear.
Doctors have also found that people with a specific gene, ApoE4, develop more amyloid and have a harder time destroying the plaques that amyloid forms. But having this gene, or even having proteins, doesn't necessarily mean you have Alzheimer's.
However, research tells us also that at least 20% of individuals that either after they passed away or they got a certain imaging quantification of their brain beta amyloid, that they have abnormal accumulation, but actually cognitively they're perfectly fine. Therefore, the first question, what's, let's say, the cause and what's the consequence? I think we shouldn't be focusing just on this one protein, because this is, if I may say, the predisposition factor to a certain extent, because we need a second protein, which comes much later, and this is the protein tau. While the first protein is outside of the nerve cells and hinders the communication between the nerve cells, the second one is in the cell. It needs this first protein to have already accumulated in the brain to then appear in the cells in a particular form, which actually degrades the scaffold of the cell. And without a scaffold, even a house will go down, and also the cell, because of this faulty protein, tau, dies. And from this moment onwards, if we may say, the protein tau is the killer. We start also much faster degrading cognitively.
So, everyone who has Alzheimer's appears to have these two proteins that form plaques and tangles in the brain. But this is only part of the story. He said that scientists still don't understand fully why some people don't develop any symptoms and why people develop different types of symptoms. Some have visual recognition problems, some language problems.
The ones who have lots of amyloid already accumulated but haven't developed the disease, well, this is the big mystery. Is it because they have some sort of hidden abilities which help them to be resilient against it? There are some responses from other neurodegenerative disorders which are telling us that the structure of these faulty proteins, be it amyloid beta or tau, maybe much more the amyloid, are related to their spatial distribution in the brain and therefore related to the symptoms or signs that we see as clinicians.
So much of this is based on studies in a certain population, and so much depends on exactly when tests are taken. It's very possible that some people in one study developed symptoms a few years after the study was done.
So you mean kind of other factors aside from maybe genes, proteins, but other factors such as education and things, we still don't know if that's why some people go on to develop symptoms or not?
Well, the question is, I guess, much more whom are we testing and at what age? Mm-hmm. This percentage, 20% of people with high amyloid but cognitively still well, this is, of course, the result of a study. Maybe this person was supposed to develop Alzheimer's disease, but a few years later, or to become symptomatic before being tested. You see, it's a little bit. We are not talking now about something that is that clear, even epidemiologically.
This has all made it very difficult to diagnose Alzheimer's, and in particular to diagnose it early. Having beta amyloid and tau proteins detectable through spinal fluid is part and parcel of diagnosis, but it isn't enough to say you have Alzheimer's. Doctors combine a range of tests, brain imaging, spinal fluid, neurological exams, cognitive tests to confirm whether someone has Alzheimer's. Just this year, the US regulator approved a blood test to detect proteins, which is less invasive and faster than taking spinal fluid. But unfortunately, there isn't a single test to say you have Alzheimer's. There is still a lot we don't know about Alzheimer's, but that hasn't stopped researchers from trying to develop treatments. This is because Alzheimer's takes a painful toll on people and their families. As we get older, the number of people with Alzheimer's is expected to rise dramatically. This will strain health systems and rob people of their identity and affect their relationships and make everyday tasks challenging. Money has been poured into finding treatments even without a full understanding of the disease. The only treatments that existed until a few years ago just eased symptoms, but didn't address the underlying causes. That's what made the news of the new treatments so important. In July 2023, the US Food and Drug Administration approved lecanemab, sold under the name Leqembi, for the treatment of early Alzheimer's disease. A year later, they approved donanemab, sold by Eli Lilly as Kisunla. Both of these drugs slow cognitive decline and lower amyloid plaque levels.
Are these drugs breakthroughs to you?
Yes, there should be a breakthrough to everybody. This is the first class of drugs which changes the destiny of a patient. It changes actually the slope of decline. In these well-documented studies, we are seeing that patients have little but sufficient and significant benefit.
According to Dragansky, it's a small but major improvement.
This means I still can talk reasonably to my granddaughter or my neighbor, that I still can go to the local grocery shop. This is about quality of life, and I think if I don't want to make the one-to-one comparison with terrible disorders like cancer and so on, but we have to be aware that we are also fighting there for months of life. And here we're talking about a fight for quality of life. And this counts. Even if it's the estimated better quality of life, 5 to 7 months, this counts.
But there is a difference between a breakthrough and a good drug. Many researchers celebrated the fact that for the first time there was something that tackled the underlying root cause of the disease, the beta amyloid proteins forming in the brain, and slowed cognitive decline.
We have the evidence from the published study, at least for the period of 1.5 years, 18 months long, that compared to a placebo, these two drugs, which are eliminating the beta amyloid from the brain, are efficient. Not only in terms of measuring the amyloid then in an individual brain, because we see already after 3 months, because it's an IV drug that's given either twice a month or once a month, depending on the drug. After 3 to 6 months, a huge percentage of the treated individuals have less amyloid. And also they are showing a certain extent of less cognitive decline.
After the US, authorities in Japan, China, and South Korea approved Leqembi. This euphoria didn't last long in Europe. In July 2024, the European Medicines Agency Review Committee recommended rejecting the drug. Some doctors also spoke out, saying that the benefits were minimal, even calling it a bad drug. In trials, Leqembi slowed cognitive decline by 27% compared to a placebo. According to some experts, this could keep dementia at bay for a mere 5 months. The European Medicines Agency argued that these benefits didn't outweigh safety concerns, which included swelling and bleeding in the brain. Late last year, European authorities reversed their decision, and the first patients in European markets started receiving Leqembi in August. The United Kingdom approved the drug, but it wasn't recommended for coverage by the National Health Service because of its cost. It argued the price, which is $26,500 a year in the US and confidential in the UK, was too high relative to the benefits. As of October 21st, the Swiss regulator hadn't come out with a decision.
Why have regulators, even in Europe and the UK, had such a difficult time coming to the same decision? Why do you think that there have been such a debate and that they have come to different decisions and Switzerland has been taking so long?
Well, I don't have the crystal ball now to say why, but I have my opinion on this. And first of all, I think, again, as an academic, I would rely on numbers. And here in Switzerland, we don't have these numbers. We don't have a proper national registry, which is telling us where, how many, who takes care, what are the economic costs.
So you do think that even though it's the actual kind of medical approval of the drug, that the data and the prices is weighing, you think, on the decision?
The absence of it, I'm afraid, at least of data, because we really don't know how much is it going to cost, because we have not the clear number. We are talking about how many patients, who has access to a memory clinic. Is it everybody? For whatever reasons. I mean, until recently, I'm sure still now, their colleagues out there, they say, well, your cognitive decline is part of aging. Why bothering?
But you don't think that some of the decision is, one, the benefit is not that great, or that there are a lot of...
The benefit is great. This is absolutely nothing if we're talking about people who really take care and see these patients and the dramatic impact of this disease on their lives and the lives of their loved ones. Even this small gain of quality of life, it is more than sufficient.
I spoke to other people in the Alzheimer's field who say that the benefit-risk equation has to be viewed in the wider context of Alzheimer's research. In the last decade, more than 200 research programs have been either abandoned or have failed in late-stage clinical trials. It's estimated that the total cost to develop an Alzheimer's drug is about $5.6 billion, compared with $2 billion for a cancer drug. One CEO of a small biotech company in Lausanne developing treatments for Alzheimer's told me that no new drugs had come on the market for so long that people stopped believing it was even possible to treat the disease.
Thanks so much for that report, Jessica. It sounds like the path to getting an Alzheimer's drug approved is a really long one. What do you think changed to make the European Medicines Agency really have that change of heart about allowing Leqembi onto the market in the end?
From what I've read, the agency re-examined the data and found that the benefits outweighed the risks, but only for a specific patient group. They actually recommended the drug only for patients with a specific genetic profile that puts them at a lower risk of side effects.
Okay, so they really kind of refined their opinion on who exactly would be allowed to have the drug in the end.
Exactly. They made it for a much narrower population to lower the risks for that group.
Okay, thank you so much for bringing us this really interesting story, Jessica.
Thank you.
So coming up in our next episode of this season of the Swiss Connection Science podcast, we'll be talking about gender medicine, something we've been hearing so much about recently. And very specifically, we'll be looking at the differences between drug development for men and women. That's all coming up next time on the Swiss Connection Science podcast. Today's episode was recorded and edited by our science and video journalist Michele Andina. For more content, visit our website, swissinfo.ch. I'm Jo Fay. Thanks for listening.
Hello, this is Imogen Folks from Swiss Info's Inside Geneva podcast. This summer, like last year, we're bringing you a fascinating series of summer profiles, starting with doctor, aid worker, and now journalist Tamam Aloudat.
Can we afford to only put roofs over people's heads and do nothing about the system? If your house was bombed for the first time, I understand. If it was bombed for the 17th time, and instead of a house, you have a tarp, and instead of food, you have animal feed or grass to eat.
Then later this month, we'll hear from international lawyer and candidate to be judge on the International Court of Justice, Dapo Akande.
It's clearly the case that in far too many cases, international law is disregarded, and you only have to turn on the news to see that. What I do know is that actually international law is increasingly regarded as relevant.
From now till September, we've got all sorts of amazing people to talk to, from an aid worker in Gaza right now to someone who started his career in Gaza 40 years ago. Join us on Inside Geneva, wherever you get your podcasts.